Everyone heard on Saturday night and Sunday morning that there was a major victory in the war on terror when U.S. troops over in Syria killed this Islamic leader, the leader of ISIS. And I want to start by just showing you, before I tell you a little bit more about this, this leader was killed by our forces along with assistance from the Kurds. And I want to just ask you first, Matt the Wonderful is on vacation. Now I have Derek the Wonderful helping out today. So Derek, I want to actually ask you please to put up clip 2 first. There's just a picture of the Washington Post headline that we shall discuss. But there, we can get it full screened. If you can see with that guy, this is the Washington Post headline. This is about al-Baghdadi, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. They described him as an austere religious scholar at the helm of Islamic State, dies at 48. Okay, there are many, many parodies on Twitter, such as Hitler, local painter, dies in accident, or just other ridiculous characterizations. This guy, who was, very fortunately for the world, killed by American troops, was the leader of ISIS. His name, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. I can't even say his name correctly. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. I want to hit several points, though, in today's first 5 about why this matters so much. Number 1, it matters a lot that the Washington Post, describing the leader of one of the most extremely evil, violent, terrorist organizations who act on their belief in Islam. One of the most radical organizations in the world, ISIS, that has literally beheaded hundreds, if not thousands of people, burned people alive, raped and pillaged villages. The leader is finally caught, and their characterization of him is austere. I actually got to be wondering if maybe I had not, I misunderstood the meaning of the word austere, because to me it was kind of serious, but austere just sounds almost like reverential. Austere means severe in manner, self-disciplined, solemn, not murderous, evil, horrible human being, but instead they call him austere. Just think about for a moment, how many levels of review at the Washington Post did that headline go through, and no one said, hey, wait a minute, we're talking about killing Baghdadi and we're calling him austere. We're calling him a religious scholar. He's a murderer. He's a cold-blooded murderer, ordering murders of thousands of innocent people. And that's the best we can do in the headline. No one in the Washington Post seemed to care about that very much. So there we had, that was the first point in my first 5 today about this takedown of Baghdadi by American troops. It was a beautiful thing. Second thing I want to talk about was that President Trump had to say about it. He held a press conference, widely criticized afterwards. I'm going to play a short segment right now with Derek the Wonderful sitting in today to play. I want to hear what President Trump had to say. And then I want to share a few really important thoughts about that. Here's President Trump.
Last night, the United States brought the world's #1 terrorist leader to justice. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi is dead. He was the founder and leader of ISIS, the most ruthless and violent terror organization anywhere in the world. The United States has been searching for Baghdadi for many years. Capturing or killing Baghdadi has been the top national security priority of my administration. U.S. Special Operations Forces executed a dangerous and daring nighttime raid in northwestern Syria and accomplished their mission in grand style.
I'm telling you, folks, he said more than that. And to be clear, he did. President Trump did describe it later in that press conference. He described how this leader, who had literally this terrorist, fanatical murderer, had panicked in the last minutes of his life, realized that American forces, along with the Kurd forces, had actually located him in northern Syria. They were going to track him down. He went into a tunnel, which it turned out had no end to it, grabbed 3 of his children, and when he realized he could not escape the American troops, he detonated a suicide vest. So he blew himself into many pieces. President Trump described in this press conference this morning, or yesterday morning, described how Baghdadi died begging, whining, crying, and he was very clearly mocking and demeaning him. And, you know, there were people who said this will just stimulate more hatred among Islam. This will just stimulate a new leader to step forward. So, you know, if we don't have this guy now, we can get somebody else. He didn't do any good. So I want to just point out that several really important things. Number one is President Trump did not say, and no one thinks, that somehow, now that we killed Baghdadi, that all of a sudden ISIS will be done. All of a sudden, Islam will be a religion of peace. All of a sudden, the entire ISIS forces around the world will drop arms and say, okay, we surrender. No one said or thought anything like that. The question of whether or not President Trump should have sounded so gleeful about the execution of this horrific, fanatical, terrorist murderer, whether he should have been so happy about it, I don't even agree with the critics who are critical of him about that. Number one, ISIS will go on. They already have a new leader, one of the former leaders in, I believe from Iraq, one of the former leaders under, in fact, I have a picture of him. Yes, he's not a very friendly looking guy. ISIS has a new leader and a former Saddam Hussein officer, Abdullah Kardash. So he's already, you know, taken over day-to-day operations of ISIS. So of course there's a new leader. But people, especially high-level people, James Clapper, former head of the DNI, former director of national intelligence, he actually said, was criticizing the idea that Trump should be celebrating the death of this man, that they'll just encourage more people to step up and take his place, encourage more people to support ISIS. I want to suggest something totally the opposite of that. ISIS and Hezbollah, all sorts of Islamic terror organizations around this world regularly threaten to kill innocent people, regularly engage in the killing of innocent people, regularly announce a plan to take over the world. There's going to be a caliphate and Islam is going to be in charge and Sharia is going to be the law. They announce their efforts. They embolden those the evil Islamic terror organizations in this world, entice young people, especially young men in America and other places in the world, to get on board, to say, wow, this is great. I want to be part of that. Yeah, let's get out there. I want to be part of ISIS. I want to be part of Al-Qaeda. I want to be part of Hezbollah. I want to be engaged in killing people. Those leaders of those evil organizations regularly entice people to join their organizations by broadcasting what they're going to be doing. So, isn't it actually more possible that President Trump's willingness to beat his chest a little bit, and it wasn't even his chest, he was praising our troops, praising our special forces in Syria, praising them for being tough and getting the job done. He, by his tone, his demeanor, he's telling this next Al-Qaeda leader, you know what, don't get too comfy. The next Al-Qaeda leader, again, his name is Abdullah Kardash. He was a former officer under Saddam Hussein, nicknamed the Destroyer. I think the Destroyer, and whoever else steps up in ISIS leadership, is actually far more likely to listen to President Trump and think, dang, this guy is not like Obama. This guy's serious. He might actually come after me. He might actually seek me out and try to do something to me. I don't see anything wrong with the president and other leaders being strong and proud of our forces, strong in our statement to the world. We will not permit terror to persist. We will fight terrorists at every turn, every place in this world. We are not apologetic about that. We are not going to say, gee, sure, sorry about the loss of human life. We're going to say, yeah, actually, we want you to be worried too, ISIS and Al-Qaeda and every other organization like this. This was a message. It wasn't a personal, boastful message. It was a message of, yeah, America's back. America, the country that's going to stand up and fight, stand up and stop terrorists, stand up and take out the bad guys. And it's kind of interesting because this has all happened in northern Syria. And you likely recall the big fuss last week when President Trump announced we're pulling our U.S. forces away from that Syrian border because the Turkish invasion was going to happen and the Kurds were in the middle of it. And America was accused actually of abandoning the Kurds. But actually what happened, the Kurds and the Americans together took out Baghdadi, not point one. And number two, this operation, now revealed, was actually being planned 2 weeks ago, before President Trump pulled our troops back. perhaps pulling our troops back, enabling this to happen in a better, safer, and more secretive way. Perhaps deluding this Baghdadi guy, maybe thinking I'm even safer. Now, look, the Americans are leaving, and here I am hiding out in northern Syria. No one knows where I am. Last point about this big news out of Washington is this. President Trump did not consult the Democrat leadership of the Congress before this planned raid and killing of Baghdadi. Nancy Pelosi is complaining about this. Representative Schiff is complaining about this. Other people, high-level Democrats, are saying basically, this isn't really right. You know, we shouldn't have the president. He should have consulted. Nancy Pelosi actually had some statement about the need for America and our leadership to have the full breadth of military strategy available before taking on an action like this. And President Trump responded to that this morning and basically said, look, I did not consult the leading Democrats in the House because they leak, because they can't be trusted, because everything I tell them gets leaked out, because they spent the last 2.5 years leaking everything they could to hurt Trump, to hurt ultimately the voters who supported President Trump. So President Trump had a great answer. He said, you know what? Yeah, I didn't consult them. I'm sure the Constitution doesn't require the president to consult the leadership in the House. I mean, he is the commander in chief. It may be past protocol, and it may be really wise past protocol to have the president consult with high-level leaders of both parties in the Congress. However, this is not a time when one of the two parties in Washington is behaving with even a modicum of seriousness, even a hint of seriousness about the jobs they hold, the reverence for the Constitution, the importance of the role they hold to be the leaders in this country. The Democrat Party has been dedicated since the moment President Trump was announced as the winner of the 2016 elections in November 2016. They have been determined above all else to take him out of office. They have veered off course, failed to engage in any reasonable, responsible legislating, failed to do anything. And since they've had the majority in 2018, and the Democrats have had the majority in the House, all they have done is try to find a way to take out President Trump. And now they're saying, gee, I'm sure he didn't consult with us. On a serious note, folks, I don't think this is a good precedent. I actually think there's some wisdom long-term and in general terms, or maybe in the abstract, with the idea of the president consulting the leaders of the House before engaging in an action like this. Having said that, facts matter, context matters, truth matters. Where we are is we have the U.S. House, all they do all day long. In fact, President Trump had a meeting in the White House that related to Syria and other matters, and Nancy Pelosi stomped out. It was like 10 days ago or something. She stomped out. You cannot expect to be treated like a serious leader of America and behave the way the Democrats in the U.S. House are behaving. You cannot expect the president to treat you as though this is business as usual. Trump did not personally go over to northern Syria and take out Baghdadi. He obviously consulted with military experts, with people within his administration who are actually trustworthy and who have America's best interests at heart. I'm sure he consulted with some of them. But the idea of Nancy Pelosi, Democrat leader, complaining that Trump didn't come and ask her first, given the way she is conducting and leading, if you can call it leading, the Democrats in the U.S. House, really put Trump in a position where he genuinely, truly cannot trust them. And if he can't be trusted, he's not going to tell you what he's about to do in taking out really the world's #1 terrorist. So yay and congratulations for our own soldiers, for people fighting to preserve America, keep America safe, for taking out Baghdadi, who, by the way, did you realize we had him, Baghdadi, this guy was killed over the weekend. America had him in custody in a prison in Iraq, the Buqa prison in Iraq. Baghdadi was imprisoned and released, imprisoned as a terrorist, as a dangerous terrorist, released under President Obama in 2009. So here we had that unleashed. But one last thing I just have to share with you. There were two different families in this country who lost loved ones, lost children, adult children, to ISIS and in particular to Baghdadi's operations. One was the family of James Foley. The other one was Kayla Mueller, Kayla, Kayla Mueller. Both of them were victims of ISIS, specifically under Baghdadi's leadership. And both those families issued beautiful statements saying, thank goodness we finally have a president who will fight back against the enemies who are killing our children. And that, my friends, is today's First Five.